Hello, everyone. It's just me, Sami. You know me, professor at Lipscomb, SamiCone.com, all the jazz. But I'm here with my friend Kelly Sutton. Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning.
You know her as a TV and radio personality and host, and basically an all-around media guru. Is that accurate?
Yes, and I will pay you for saying that.
Thank you
very much. Your check's in the mail.
Thank you. She's also the president of Firefly Media. So when we're talking media, public speaking, PR, interviewing, I couldn't think of anyone better than you to come to. So thank you for giving me some time this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
I would rather be doing this in the same place, like with a cup of tea or something and, some brownies. But alas, the snow in Nashville has kept us from.
You know what? It's good. I'm in my home office. I've got my warm mug full.
Cheers.
There you go. Cheers. Very nice. I love it. Good stuff.
Okay, so we're speaking specifically to the communication students today at Lipscomb University, although I would guess that anyone could really benefit from what we're talking about today, but the art of the interview. So You are, again, the pro in terms of interviewing. I feel awkward again interviewing you today. I feel like it should be reversed. Can you? I'm like, oh, am I going to do okay? But,
I like this. I like being on this side of it. I like being on this side of it.
Good. Okay, well, can you start out and just kind of define for us, what are the parallels between being interviewed and public speaking? I mean, I don't want to state the obvious, but let's state the obvious.
You know, to me, and I know that you probably feel the same way because we are very similar in styles. Mm-hmm. Public speaking to me is having a conversation and there happen to be a few other people in the room.
Right.
So I think that that's really the key, especially when it comes to interviews.
Yeah.
The best interviews that I've ever done, and I take this away from other people that have taught me and other people that I've learned from, and then just my own experience, but I've always felt like the best interviews I've ever had have just really been conversations that I've had with the other person.
Yeah.
So it's important to prepare. It's important to have your notes. It's important to have your questions and your bullet points, but it's also important to go with the flow of the conversation. Yeah. If you've got bullet points and you're trying to force the issue on some questions and that interviewee is not responsive to that, it's going to make for a bad interview. So sometimes it's better to just, toss the notes, go with it, and you end up with something that's really great. And, opposed to actually trying to stick to what your plan was or formatting it in your head and worried about the next question instead of listening to what you should be listening to. So I think it's just really the art of conversation, having a good conversation and realizing that there are other people that are around you listening.
That just happened to be there.
Yeah, they're just in the room. No big deal.
Well, let's go on that because I was just talking to the class about audience analysis, how to go with the flow, as you said. Let's start before that. The preparation. You said preparation is key, and I agree. I was just saying I just did a TV segment yesterday where I started out with 8, maybe 9 bullet points, knowing full well that would never fly for a 4-minute.
Maybe 3. Maybe got to 3.
Right.
Yeah.
So I narrowed it down. I did. But, I think especially people that are new into public speaking, they want, like you said, kind of want to be over-prepared, but then they overwhelm themselves. So is it better to have all that prepared and then sometimes maybe get lost in it, or really just to stick to 3 and know those 3 in and out? What's a good tip for someone that's giving a speech or going into an interview?
For me, if I'm giving a speech, I think it is easier just to have those 3, maybe 4 bullet points, depending on the length of the speech, and know them well. Believe them. I mean, that's the other thing. If you're speaking about something that you have no idea about, people are going to know. You can tell. Yeah. You can tell. I mean, if you pull me up and you start asking me the difference between these guitars that are hanging behind me, I don't know. Those are my husband's. I don't have a clue.
They look good.
One's electric, one's acoustic. I don't know the rest of it. But the point is, I'm not an expert on that. So I would try to find 3 things that I do know and point those out and try to stay with those in public speaking. Now, with an interview, I think it's a little different. I think that you can do a lot of background. I think you can do a lot of research. I had a chance last night to interview Susie Boggess, incredible musician. She's amazing. And she has a brand new album out. So I did the research. I found out what the album was about. I listened to the album, so I actually knew what I was going to be talking to her about. But then I also found some cute little bullet points about the fact that, this album is all Merle Haggard songs, and she first heard Merle Haggard when she was in the truck with her dad. So I thought that was a really cool little pull away from that, and that was one of my questions. Tell me about being in the truck with your dad and hearing Merle Haggard for the first time on the radio. What was that like?
Yeah.
So, to me, having that, I prepared for it. I was hoping that we'd get around to that.
Right.
And there were 2 or 3 other questions I really wanted to get to, but Susie went off and started telling me this incredible story, and it was an amazing interview. I couldn't have, forced her into a better interview.
Yeah.
Right. It just happened. So I think with public speaking, bullet points, just a few of them, and know them very, very well. But then I think for an interview, do the research, know it, get it in your head, have some questions ready, and then go with the flow.
Yeah, that's a good point of knowing the stories behind it. I mean, bullet points are only going to get you so far, but if you can't connect those well, if you don't know the background, the story, it comes across as fake and uninteresting, frankly.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you're right. You're exactly right.
So let's look at, when things don't go your way. Let's say you've got your 3 questions or your 3 bullets, and they answer yes, no, yes. And okay, now we're here. Or, you're asking those things and they just totally go, like you said, kind of another direction. How do you adapt in your speaking to when your audience throws you for those loops? Obviously, that happened to you in a positive way with the Susie Boggess interview. What about in a not so positive way? How do you then kind of roll with the flow?
Okay, so my joke is that I have an unofficial degree in dentistry because I've had to pull teeth. And that's basically, there have been some interviews that have been pulling teeth, and they've been awkward and strange and awful. But the key is you have to remain in control. Now, you don't want to be overbearing, and sometimes it's a fine line, because if someone is really getting off on a tangent and you need to bring them back around, in television you only have so long. You only have 4 minutes, you only have 5 minutes, and they're in your ear telling you to wrap, or you need to move on to the next thing. One of the things that I used to do when I was doing a lot of television interviews, I'd let them know. I would tell them, hey, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. I just have a couple questions for you. You can fill in the blanks. When we get close to time, I might reach over and kind of touch your shoulder so that we need to wrap up our thoughts. And that was always really helpful for them too, because then they felt like they had an idea of where we were going with it. If you're just on the fly and you're in the middle of a situation where somebody comes up and you've got to do that interview and they start to go off in that tangent, I think that's when you relate to them. You almost repeat what it is that they're saying to you, so that you let them know, I'm hearing you. I hear what you're saying. I know that's where you want to go. I also wanted to ask, and then interject your question. I think sometimes it's just the acknowledgement of letting them know, I understand you wanted to get that point in. We got it. Let's move on to the next. And I've had hostile interviews too. I've had people where I've just had to completely cut them off, jump in and say, you know what, we're out of time. Sorry. You hate to do that because it always comes off as rude. And that's the one thing that I really, really hated to do to somebody. But sometimes you just have to do that. I think the key is that when you're the interviewer, you have to remain in control, you have to remain poised, and you have to make sure that you have that authority in your voice, that people believe that you are in control of the interview.
Absolutely. Well, it's funny when you talk about, having to jump in or having to redirect in a public speaking model there. Can you I'm putting you a little bit on the spot. I'm warning you.
That's okay.
So
I'm used to it.
So one of the things in terms of audience analysis, and when you're going into a speech, I think when you're doing a radio segment or a TV segment, who your audience is very clearly, and it's very defined. You've interviewed a lot, let's just say on the country music, let's say. You've interviewed a lot of country music celebrities, obviously being in Nashville. That's not a stretch. Let's say you had to do the same thing for an audience that was in New York City, or so what do you do when you've got a topic or an interview you're familiar with, but your audience really isn't? How would that interview then differ for you?
I think that the key is, as long as there's energy in the interview, and as long as you, again, feel like you are in control and you let everyone else know that, it's believable and it's a good conversation. I think the difference in your audience, you're just going to have to explain it a little bit more. If I'm about to interview, Kid Rock, and no one knows who Kid Rock is, I'm, doing this interview for the symphony,
Yeah.
and the symphony members are sitting in front of me and they have no idea, then that's where it comes in, the preparation, that you knew that's the interview that you were going to do, and that you knew that that was the audience that you were going to have.
Yeah.
I think that there's a big, big key to trying to find out as much about your audience before you walk into a situation. There are always going to be situations where you have no clue. You're thrown out on stage and you have no idea who's in that audience. So you just need to be as open and inviting as possible. Yeah. I think the key is to win them over with your shining personality and a lot of energy. Energy is contagious. I mean, when you're on stage, if you're energetic and you're enthusiastic about what you're about to do, without being fake, but still having that energy and feeling like, this is going to be a great interview, people pick up on that. And I think that goes a long way.
You made a good point, because in our last, obviously in the first set of speeches that we did, we had a wide variety. Some people had been on debate teams and improv classes. Some people had an extreme fear of public speaking. Right, but we've talked about how being nervous is actually good, because again, it's a form of energy. It's a form of adrenaline. It's just how you channel it. How can you, again, put those nerves to work for you without making it seem over the top, and I'm really happy to be here, and this is what I love to talk about, and you're gonna love it too.
Unless you're working for Disney Channel, that just is not gonna fly.
We're still praying, right?
Disney's calling me right now. I think a lot of it just has to do with practice. It's I just don't know that there's any good answer to that.
That's a good answer. I think that's
unless it's just practice, because I had the good fortune of doing TV in Nashville for 13 years, and I look at some of the stuff I did in the early days and I cringe. Like I can't believe I did that. That was horrible. What was I thinking? And why did I wear that? But
hang on, let me get the hair montage in.
Yes, could you please? It'd be fantastic. But I look at the interviews I did and I realized, I think, it was a lot of that. It was a lot of the over the top, and I was extremely nervous, and I was trying to channel that into a positive situation and try to make it into something that was fantastic. And it did seem completely caricature of me. So watching myself and seeing that, I was like, okay, we need to take it down a couple notches. We need to reel it in.
Just bring it on back.
Bring it on back, right. So you need to just take a minute. But I think it seriously comes with practice. It comes with doing it as much as you can, watching yourself, even though you hate it. I think everyone is their own worst critic, but watching yourself and getting to know what your bad habits are. I also have a fantastic husband that's been with me through my television career, and he'll tell me, he'll just be like, oh, by the way, if you say about one more time, you're driving me nuts. Stop. So, if you get feedback from other people, from friends, family, whether it's wanted or not, they're going to tell you. I think really just, the nervousness will start to subside. The more you do it, the more you practice, and the better you prepare. I think there's always going to be the jitters of walking out onto a stage in front of a crowd. I mean, I can honestly say I've done this for years. I don't get nervous in front of a TV camera because there are no eyeballs on the other side. I don't see those people looking back at me. But walking onto a stage in front of a large group, I still get butterflies. I think that that's healthy and normal. But when you know what you're about to talk about and you feel very prepared and confident, that subsides once you start getting into it,
Yeah, I feel like, I can't remember who it was, but it was a very seasoned performer that said, there's something wrong with you if you don't get butterflies before you go out in front of a big crowd. It means you don't care enough. It means you're not invested in the performance. And so that's I agree. True. And I think, again, another great point that you make, so many so far, but about practicing, I think a lot of times, especially in a classroom situation, you get into that kind of bubble, that cubicle of, I'm going to read my speech, I'm going to rehearse it, I'm going to put my headphones on, and it becomes here, as opposed to watching yourself in the mirror, putting a video on you, having your two roommates sit and listen to you. And I think that's a really good point. You you always joke about the America's Next Top Model, watch yourself in the mirror, look at yourself, pose. And it seems silly, but you have to, what do your facial expressions look like? You don't know unless you're speaking it to yourself where you can see.
Absolutely.
So that's a really, really good tip. You have what are some other ways of practicing that speech that we might not have talked about other than a video camera or, grabbing the roommates?
Just grabbing the roommates. For me, I think a lot of it is I like to write things down because I feel like if I write them out or even, just type up notes, whatever, it doesn't have to be handwritten, but just the physical of putting it together with reading it and knowing I've already written that, I remember it better.
I agree.
So a lot of my bullet points, if when I have them, I'll write them down 2 or 3 times, or I might put them on, a different colored note card, because there's something about that memory of, oh, the pink note card is heart awareness, the yellow note card, we're talking more about how to oxygenate your brain. I don't know, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's different colors, and so it's going to trigger that in your memory. So those are little cues that I used. I think, it just comes back to whatever works for you. I think everybody has a different study style, and it almost goes into, how do you study for a test? What works for you? Is it memorization? Is it writing it down? Is it cue cards? Is it, having a quiz and answer session with your friend? So if you take some of that and what works for you there, I think that's also going to help you in your public speaking.
Yeah. What do you think, and let's get a little broader now, just in terms of, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about your career, of course. What were some of your favorite interviews? What in your mind stands out as, man, that was a great interview?
I've got a couple. I loved. I did an interview with Dolly Parton, and she's everything you think she is. She's absolutely everything you think she is. She's amazing, hilarious, funny, totally put me at ease. That was one moment that I was completely starstruck. Dolly was up here. So I loved that interview, and she was just so genuine and so kind. And when you meet somebody that you know everything about them because you're a fan, that's kind of tough, because you don't want to be like, you don't want to be the you don't want to be the Chris Farley character from Saturday Night Live. Like, remember that one time when you sang Code of Colors and I loved it? It was awesome. Like, you don't want to turn into that person. And I did. Like, I kind of did in a way.
I feel like we should do some spoofs, right? Like, that'll be our next interview. We'll do the what not to do in an interview.
It's our web series.
Yeah.
But that was a great interview for me. I did another great interview. Ben Taylor. I don't know if everybody's familiar with Ben Taylor or not. James Taylor and Carly Simon's son. Oh. Incredible artist. He's amazing. But he was one that was just really deep. Like, we started to talk about music, and he started talking about how music makes him feel. And when you're talking to somebody that really is passionate about what they're doing, that was a fantastic interview. I loved that one. And I've had some other really, really good ones over the years. I did an incredible interview with Kid Rock. He told me he likes to go antiquing. So if you see him in antique stores around Franklin and Nashville, then there's Bobby. Just wave to him. It's been great. The funniest, though, I would have to say, probably one of my funniest interviews, I did Bill Bellamy, he was hilarious anyway.
Oh my gosh.
But Hank Williams Jr.
Oh my goodness.
He was not in a good mood that day, and so he really didn't want to be interviewed. And I just laughed along with him, and he went on a tangent, and I went along with it. And then at the end, he said, "You know what? It takes a special person to put up with somebody like me," and he kissed me on the mouth, which was a little weird. But then he just got up and walked away. So, he made an impression.
That's what you want to call it? Okay.
It was great. But, it's Bocephus. What do? You just roll with it and go brush your teeth. So it was all good.
Hilarious. Well, and I think that's, people always say, what makes Barbara Walters a great interviewer? And the joke about, well, you got to get someone to cry, or you've got to, uncover the secret no one else has uncovered, or, whatever it happens to be. What is there some, unpublished book of interview rules somewhere that, the TV reporters keep under the desk with the iPad and the lipstick?
I'm writing it right now.
Okay.
So when it comes out, I'll come in and I'll pitch my book. No, I think that the key is, to me, know their work and know who they are, but just talk. They're just normal people. I mean, they are totally normal people. And the more that you talk to them and act like they're just normal people, the more they respect you and the more you get to know them. And honestly, I've had just these fantastic conversations with these people before we were taping or before we were on the air. And I think that's another key. If you have to interview someone, whether it's in a setting where you're taping or you're going to be live on stage, get to know that person before you walk out on stage with them as much as you can. Yeah. Just, you know, chat with them, find out what they like, get to know who they are. You know, do they have kids? What do they do during the day? And that kind of stuff goes a long way. And then you feel like you're talking to a friend. You're not interviewing someone. And I think that's what makes a great interview.
Yeah, it's interesting. The iBlog magazine interviews that I'm doing now, we do 2 with each person. We do the expert interview where we kind of like we're doing here, we get down to whatever their specialty is, but we also do a 10-minute, what we call our flip side, where it's literally just coffee talk. Okay, tell me where you're from. Tell me about your family. You know, we'll do just quick answer questions. And a lot of times I'll do that first because, like you said, it kind of puts them at ease. It's just silly, and it just becomes that, what would 2 friends do together, as opposed to the staunch, this is what I feel like I'm supposed to say and what I feel like is expected of me. And a couple times I've actually done that where we've kind of stopped taping in between the expert interview and we just started talking, and I'll just hit record. And 3 minutes into it, I'm like, oh, by the way, this is our flip side interview.
No, I totally agree with that. And I think, you know, it just goes a long way because you're building relationships with these people, and it depends on who it is. You know, for me, a lot of the people that I've talked to have all been music industry folks, whether it's publicists or, you know, artists or whoever. But the great thing is, I've had so many people that have said lovely things about the interview that I've done with them, and then they want to interview with me again. Like, it makes it so much easier to go back for a second interview going, hey, can I talk to Hank Williams Jr.? Remember you kissed me on the mouth? Oh, yeah, come on in. You know, like, it's,
who can forget?
It's like one of those, who can forget? But it's one of those, you know, if you do it well and you're developing relationships, you're actually becoming a better interviewer, but people remember who you are, and then they want to talk to you again. I have never been one to put somebody on the spot. I don't like that. I think it's ambush. I think it's ambush journalism. I've never been that way. It's not that I've avoided the tough questions. I've just let them know. You know, we've had politicians that have come in and sat down with me, and I tell them off the bat, hey, you know what? Here's what we're going to cover. And I'm going to talk to you about your voting record. And I'm going to talk to you about the fact that, you know, you voted yes on this when your constituents were telling you no. So I'm going to let you know it's coming, you know, just a heads up. I just think that's fair. I don't like being in the middle of an interview where everybody thinks it's roses and unicorns, and then all of a sudden, boom, you hit them. That to me is just not cool. I don't agree with that. And I think that journalists that do that have a lifespan, but they don't have a long lifespan because after a while, people are like, why do I want to do an interview with you?
So true.
You're just going to, you know, shock and awe. If they're prepared and they know it's coming, that's a different story. Then you know what? I told you that I was going to ask that question. You didn't have a good answer. That's your own fault. But at least I gave you a heads up for it. So, you know, I've never been a big fan of ambushing someone with a question.
Well, and that's a good point, like you said. And I mean, even in the world of online or anything, you know, the difference between getting a spike, having something go viral, but then what do you do with it? You know, what's your reputation? How do you manage that over the long term? So it's the same kind of principle. That's really smart. Well, I don't want to talk too much longer. I appreciate your time. We're kind of almost coming up to that half-hour mark. But if we flip the tables on being interviewed, if I am going to be interviewed, you know, and even if we look at a job interview, let's say, for students, or, you know, if someone else is watching that is in this kind of world, what are the main things that I need to do to be prepared as an interviewee?
You know, it's so key, and I know everyone has heard this, probably everyone in the classroom right now has heard this at one point in their life, but when you walk in the door, when you sit down on the stage, depending on where you are, if you're in a room with just one person or 15 people, those people are going to make their mind up about you in the first 15 seconds. 15 seconds. That's it.
Thank you for saying that.
It's so very true. So your appearance, I mean, you hate to judge a book by its cover, but they're going to. So your appearance, what you look like, what you sound like, if you're confident, the way you shake their hand, all of those things add up before you even open your mouth. So I feel like, you know, being able to walk into a room confidently, make eye contact with everybody in that room, shake their hand firmly. There's nothing worse than a dead fish handshake. I'm sorry. I agree. I hate that. So, you know, shake their hand firmly. Don't break their knuckles, but shake their hand firmly. you're confident in who you are. And there's a difference between being confident and being arrogant.
Yeah.
So, being confident in who you are means that you know that you're prepared, you're ready for what they're about to ask you, and you feel good about it. And I think that you build yourself up, you walk in, sit down, and whatever they're going to ask you from there on out. And I think that if anybody can think of it in those terms,
right,
from 15 seconds in, if you nailed walking in the room without tripping, saying your name properly, and shaking their hand and making eye contact, then you're pretty much through the majority of what they're going to think.
That's true. That's a good point.
So from there on out, as long as you don't cuss, you should be okay. The other thing is definitely, if you're interviewing for a job and you're going in for a certain company, know what they do. I mean, don't walk in. Again, it's the preparedness. Know what they do. Know what it is that you can offer them, and be prepared to make your case as to why you're the best candidate.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to compare it to American Idol, but every season we see these kids walk up and say, "I'm the next American Idol because blah 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 blah." And if they are convincing and they have poise about them, then you kind of go, okay, well, I'm going to listen to what else you have to say, and I'm going to listen to you sing. If you walk in and they're like, I don't know, you automatically don't want to hear them sing.
Yeah.
Like they could just turn around and walk out of the room at that point.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it is just being prepared, walking in, knowing, again, your audience and who you're going to be talking to, and energy, a lot of energy.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to let you end on maybe kind of a funny note. I mean, we both come from the world of dance and cheer and that, and there's an element. I'm not going to make you cheer, don't worry. But there's that element of fake it till you make it. And I say this not to discount the preparedness message that we were just sharing.
Right.
But you have to act like nothing else in the world is wrong at that moment. Like you said, once you walk up, you're on. And one of the things I've been trying to instill with my students is that once you're in front of me, I don't know whether you've, prepared for a month. I don't know whether you prepared that morning. You have to act like you've got this all together. And if something goes wrong, if you forget a point, you can't say, can I start over? You don't go, one of the thing that kills me watching figure skating for some reason, I see it more than anything else, is they do this whole thing and then at the end they just crumble more. I mean, probably 90% of the time they're like, oh, and I'm like, don't you realize the judges are still watching you? Right. Like it's a subjective sport. So what advice would you have for someone if you have that, oh my gosh, I just forgot everything I was supposed to say? Do you have a funny, do you have a go-to, here's how I'm going to transition, or do you have any little tricks up your sleeve?
Honestly, I've had a couple of those moments, and one of them actually happened a few years ago. I was speaking to a group at Fort Campbell, which, I mean, seriously, are you going to forget what you're saying in front of generals at Fort Campbell? So great.
No pressure.
But I quickly just said to them, no pressure. I immediately turned it around and said, I just want to take a moment and say thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for what you've done for our country. I played to the crowd. I mean, I started to tap dance, and girl, I was doing a shuffle ball step because I completely had no clue what I was about to say. But that moment, and then they all clapped. Yay. And I'm like, okay, think. There it is. So if you know your crowd and you're prepared at least that much, if you can think on your feet, and I think a lot of thinking on your feet is just coming from practice. I hate to say that because there's not a whole lot that you can do other than just do it a lot, Get in front of as many people as you can, talk to as many people as you can. If you want to be in TV, if you want to be on the radio, you got to start doing it. I am I can't talk now, of course, but I am a test case scenario. I started working in television in college and just carried it from there on out. And I honestly had such a head start on other people that were graduating because I already had 2 years in at a station. They hired me out of college because they knew I knew how to edit, I knew how to talk on my feet, I knew how to do interviews. That's the kind of stuff that you just can't replace. You just do it. You just do it. And like you said, fake it till you make it. Even if you don't know what you're doing, get in there, jump in both feet first, smile, have energy, get used to it. And I would never turn down any opportunity, whether it's speaking, to the ladies' social bridge club or, Lipscomb University. I would never turn down an opportunity to speak in front of people because it just makes you better.
Well, there you have it. I think it's a great message. I mean, in this microwave culture we live in, everyone expects that someone's going to kind of discover you on the street corner and, walk up to you with a job offer for 6 figures. And it's not the case. So nope. I appreciate it. Where can people find you if they want to track you down on Twitter or websites, all that good stuff?
Absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at TV Kelly Sutton. And also you can find my Facebook page, same thing, TV Kelly Sutton on Facebook. And Instagram is TV Kel. And my website is kellysutton.net. And you can find me all over the place. So I'm doing a lot of stuff on Zeus Country. And I'll be around doing some new webisodes very soon, hopefully.
Awesome. Very good. Thank you so much for taking the time this morning. I appreciate it. I hope everyone benefits something from this. Again, you can find me at the Sami Cone on Twitter, samicone.com. And I hope this is a benefit. I know I've learned something. I appreciate it, girl.
Bye.
Bye.